Welcome to Deep Thoughts, a podcast designed to take you on an introspective journey into the mindsets and strategies that fuel personal growth. In every episode, we'll explore the intersection of psychology, spirituality, and real-world tactics, guiding you through powerful methods to elevate your health, wealth, relationships, and overall well-being. From deep dives into transformative habits and mindsets to candid discussions about the challenges we face in today's fast-paced world, Deep Thoughts is here to remind you of the untapped potential that lies within. If you're ready to disconnect from the distractions and connect with the tools and insights needed to create lasting change, this show is your sanctuary for self-discovery and empowerment. Tune in, reflect, and take action towards a more vibrant and fulfilling life.
Let's dive into this. Ego development.
You know what's really interesting about ego development?
What's that?
It's not just about your personality. It goes way deeper than that. We're talking about how we build our own reality, like how we control our impulses, our relationships, even how we see ourselves.
So it's kind of like we all have our own lens that we use to see the world. Like, I'm thinking someone at an early stage would see things totally different from someone who's further along. What do you think?
Oh, yeah, totally. It's like each stage is a different filter. We use it to understand things, make decisions, figure out what success means. And the thing is, it's not like some stages are better than others. Each one has its own good stuff and its own problems.
Okay, so let's break down this journey of, like, expanding our awareness. Loevinger had these 9 stages, starting with the pre-social.
Picture a baby, right? Totally focused on what they need right now. Survival, comfort, basic connection. That's it. There's not even really an ego yet, just pure instinct.
And then, bang, they start asserting themselves, and it's the impulsive stage. Makes me think of the terrible twos. They want what they want right now.
Totally egocentric, and any kind of discipline, forget it. They see it as being held back. But, you know, it's also when they start getting a handle on themselves, like the first bits of self-control popping up. And as they figure out how the world works, they move on to the self-protective stage.
So now it's all about staying out of trouble, following the rules so they don't get punished, right? Still pretty self-centered, but they're starting to get consequences.
Exactly. Learning self-control, seeing that their actions actually do something, you know, that's huge. But they don't really see the difference between different kinds of rules yet or why the rules exist in the first place.
And then it gets really interesting, right? We hit the conformist stage. Fitting in with the group is everything. Social approval is like gold. Man, middle school all over again.
Right. You got to fit in. You don't want to be the odd one out. Think about how strong groupthink is at that age. They might not even think about questioning authority or going against what everyone else is doing, even if it doesn't feel right to them.
Yeah, and even as adults, that urge to conform can be really strong, whether we realize it or not.
Absolutely. But some people, they start to break away from needing everyone to like them all the time. And that's when you get to the self-aware stage.
So things are shifting internally now, like the first signs of looking inward, questioning what society says is right, and noticing when our actions don't match up with what we believe.
Exactly. And this stage often comes with being more interested in relationships, like really connecting with people. As their sense of self gets stronger, they can handle those deeper connections.
And then we've got the conscientious stage, which seems to be what everyone's aiming for, at least in the West. It's all about having those internal rules, responsibility, and achievements.
Think about it. Our school systems, climbing the ladder at work, even political campaigns, it's all about individual success and being accountable. That's what's important at this stage. But, you know, are those values really showing the whole picture of human development? Makes you think, huh?
For sure. Someone at this stage could be killing it in those systems, but maybe they haven't quite grasped how different everyone is, how complex human experience really is.
Exactly. That shift usually happens at the individualistic stage, where people start to appreciate personal growth and being true to themselves.
So now it's about understanding that those social structures have limits, and expressing yourself is key to a good life.
You got it. They start to see morality as less about hard and fast rules and more about understanding the situation, the context. That's where you see more tolerance for things being unclear, a willingness to challenge the way things are.
I bet someone at this stage would be a really great leader, especially with all the crazy stuff we're dealing with these days. They could handle different points of view and deal with uncertainty way better.
People at this stage, they have that flexibility and open-mindedness that you need to lead well in this fast-changing world. They don't get stuck on dogma or groupthink, so they make decisions that are more independent and insightful.
This is all so fascinating. Okay, so what's next after the individualistic stage?
That brings us to the autonomous stage. And this is where self-acceptance comes in, along with a deep understanding of how interconnected everything is.
So instead of trying to control everything themselves, they realize that life is all about connection.
Right on. They move past that rigid thinking and embrace the complexity. They can see things from different sides without feeling threatened, and they're totally comfortable with ambiguity. They thrive where others might feel totally lost.
Seems like that stage takes a big internal shift. And from what I've read, it's not all that common, right?
It's not. And the next one, the integrated stage, that's even less common. This stage is all about wisdom, deep empathy, and a sense of peace that comes from facing your inner struggles and accepting your place in the universe.
It sounds almost like a myth, you know? Like the ultimate goal of human growth and transformation.
Doesn't it? But there are people out there who embody these qualities, showing us what's possible for all of us.
And then there's that possible 10th stage, flowing.
Oh yeah, flowing. Merging with the world, letting go of judgment, just going with the flow of experience. It's a wild concept. It really challenges how we understand the ego itself.
Wow, we've come a long way from basic needs to like transcending the ego. But how does all this play out in real life?
Well, that's where the research on ego integrity in older adults gets really interesting. We can see how these stages connect to finding peace and fulfillment as we get older.
You mean that study that looked at Erikson's stages of psychosocial development? What did they find out?
They found that generativity in adulthood, that's when people focus on taking care of the next generation, was the biggest predictor of feeling peaceful and fulfilled later in life. So it seems like contributing to something bigger than yourself might be a key part of aging well.
Makes me wonder about the choices we're making now and what they mean in the long run. Are we setting ourselves up for the future with everything we do, every interaction? Pretty thought-provoking, huh?
It is. And it shows how powerful it is to understand these stages. We start to see how our experiences now are shaping our well-being in the future.
Yeah, I'm starting to see how this framework could be a real game changer in so many areas of life.
Oh, it definitely can be. And it's not just about personal growth. It's relevant to leadership, how organizations work, even how society progresses.
We've just scratched the surface here. There's so much more to explore.
Definitely. But let's take a pause here, let you process all this. We'll be back to explore even more about this fascinating world of ego development.
All right, I've had some time to think. And what really strikes me is how much our stage of development affects everything we do. You know, our relationships, how we make decisions. It's like a whole new way of understanding people.
It really can be eye-opening. But before we go on, there are a couple of things to keep in mind, just some nuances about these stages. First, they're not set in stone. People can shift between them depending on the situation, and it's not always a straight line from one to the next.
So like someone could be super conscientious at work, but then in their personal life, they're more individualistic.
Exactly. And the second thing is, it's not a race to the top to get to the highest stage as fast as you can. Each stage has its own strengths and challenges. It's the journey that matters, not just the end point.
Yeah, that's a good point. It's easy to fall into judging ourselves or other people based on this framework.
Right, and we want to avoid that.
Oh.
This is about understanding, not judging.
Okay, so we've talked about the first 8 stages, from pre-social to integrated. But what about those transpersonal stages, the ones that go beyond the individual self? They sound pretty mind-blowing.
They are pretty mind-blowing. That's where things get really interesting, especially for people who are fascinated by human potential and consciousness.
All right, let's start with the construct-aware stage. That's where people start questioning reality itself, right? Like, what is real?
Exactly. They start to see that their sense of self, their beliefs, even how they perceive the world, are all just constructs, like creations of the mind.
So it's like deconstructing their whole reality. That must be really profound, maybe even a little scary.
It can be both. It often comes with a lot of existential questions, and that can be unsettling. But it's also incredibly freeing. They're not bound by the limits of their old worldview anymore.
And that opens up all sorts of new possibilities for understanding themselves and the world.
Exactly. They start to see how interconnected everything is, and their sense of self expands to include something much bigger than just their individual identity.
Now, the unitive stage, this is the peak of Cook-Greuter's model, and as we said, it's super rare. What does it even look like to get to that level of development? What makes a unitive ego different?
Well, people at this stage experience a deep sense of oneness with everything. They see past the illusions of separation and duality, and they live from a place of deep compassion and interconnectedness.
I can only imagine the impact someone at that stage could have on the world.
They can be very influential, but their impact might not be in traditional leadership roles or hierarchies. Their influence comes from who they are, from embodying wisdom and compassion.
So it's not just about understanding it intellectually, it's a fundamental change in consciousness.
Exactly. And it's not something you can force or achieve through willpower. It's about surrender and grace, allowing yourself to be transformed by something bigger than yourself.
We've talked about how ego development affects decision-making and leadership, but what about other parts of life? Like, how does it influence our relationships?
That's a great question. Think about romantic relationships. Someone at the conformist stage might be all about fitting in with their partner's friends and family, following those traditional relationship rules.
And someone at the individualistic stage might focus on their own growth and self-expression within the relationship, maybe even challenging those norms.
Right. And at the autonomous stage, you might see them focusing on supporting each other's individual journeys, really understanding each other's needs, and being willing to embrace the complexity of being together for the long haul.
Wow, it's amazing how much these stages can shape how a relationship works.
It is. And this goes beyond romantic relationships, too. These stages affect how we connect with family, friends, colleagues, even ourselves.
So someone at a higher stage of development might have more fulfilling relationships because they're more self-aware, more empathetic, and they can see past their own ego.
That's definitely possible. Remember, higher stages are linked to greater compassion, understanding, and forgiveness. Those are powerful qualities to bring to any relationship.
This is all starting to click, but how do we know what stage we're at? Is there some kind of test we can take?
There are assessments out there, yeah. But honestly, the most important tool is self-awareness. Pay attention to your own patterns of thinking, feeling, and behaving. Notice how you react in different situations, what motivates you, and how you interact with others.
So instead of trying to label ourselves, it's more about just observing where we're at and how we're showing up in the world.
Exactly. And that awareness can be really powerful. It lets us make conscious choices about how we want to grow and evolve.
So instead of getting hung up on what stage we're at, we can focus on developing the qualities we admire in people who seem further along, like empathy, compassion, and wisdom.
Absolutely. It's about embracing the journey of growth and becoming the best version of ourselves, whatever that looks like for each person.
That's a great message. Takes the pressure off, reminds us this is a lifelong process, not a race.
Exactly. And it's a journey full of challenges and triumphs, setbacks, and breakthroughs. But it's definitely worth taking.
Okay, I'm feeling inspired. What else can you tell us about the bigger picture of ego development? Does it have anything to do with creativity or problem solving?
Those are great questions. And it turns out, ego development has a huge impact on pretty much every aspect of human experience. So think about creativity. Say you've got someone at the conformist stage. They might stick to the traditional ways of doing things, follow all the rules and conventions in whatever creative field they're in. But someone at the individualistic stage, they might be more likely to break those rules, explore ideas that are outside the box, maybe even challenge what people think of as creative in the first place. As we move through the stages, you might see a shift from seeing creativity as just expressing yourself to something bigger, like tapping into a universal flow of inspiration, connecting with something beyond yourself.
Wow, that's pretty deep. So how does this work with problem solving?
Well, let's say you've got someone at the self-protective stage. They might approach problems in a selfish way, focused on protecting themselves and getting the most they can.
Yeah, that makes sense.
But someone at the conscientious stage might be more systematic, focused on the goal, using logic and analysis to find the most efficient solution.
Right, so they have a plan.
And then as they move into the individualistic stage, problem solving might involve thinking about everyone's point of view, trying to find solutions that work for everyone, not just themselves.
So it's not just any solution, it's the best solution for everyone involved.
Exactly. And when they get to the autonomous stage, you might even see them being okay with not being in control, embracing uncertainty, trusting that the best solution will come from the collective wisdom of the group.
Wow. So basically, as we grow and develop, our way of solving problems changes too. It becomes more complex, more well-rounded, maybe even wiser.
I think that's a great way to put it. And this has implications for how we deal with challenges in our own lives, but also how we face global problems as a society.
It's incredible to think about how this framework can explain not just how individuals behave, but also how whole societies evolve. Makes you wonder how we can encourage this kind of development on a larger scale, you know?
That's a really important question. How do we create environments where individuals can grow and transform, leading to a world that's more compassionate, more just, and more sustainable? It's definitely worth thinking about.
It is. But I think this deep dive has given us a new way to look at those questions. We've learned so much about how our inner world shapes what happens outside of us.
I agree. This deep dive has been all about seeing ourselves, our relationships, and the world in a new light.
As we wrap up this exploration of ego development, what's the one thing you hope our listeners will take away from this?
I'd say this: ego development is a journey, not a destination. It's a lifelong process of growth and change, and while these stages are helpful, they're just guides, not strict categories.
So it's not about reaching some perfect final stage. It's about becoming more self-aware, more compassionate, and more connected to the world around us.
That's a perfect way to put it.
Right.
And by working on those qualities, we can create a world that's better for everyone.
That's a powerful thought to leave us with. This has been an amazing journey, and I want to thank you for guiding us through it.
The pleasure was all mine. And to our listener, I'll leave you with this. Instead of worrying about what stage you're at, what if you just focused on being more curious, more compassionate, and more open to the beauty and mystery of it all? Imagine what's possible.
What a great way to end this. Until next time, keep exploring, keep growing, and keep diving deep.
Thank you for tuning in to this episode of the Deep Thoughts Podcast. I hope you found insights and inspiration to take with you on your journey of self-growth. If you enjoyed the show, be sure to hit the subscribe button so you never miss an episode. And don't forget to follow us on social media to stay updated on new releases and exclusive content. See you next time, where we'll continue to help you grow and explore your full potential.